policies adopted by the British, and then we have discussed that golden bird turn into bird. So golden bird turn into bird. This is the last thing that we have discussed. So 7th number question we have already finished. Now coming to the question number 8, which is related to the revolutionary activities. Discuss the course of revolutionary activities in 1920s and 30s, with a special focus on revolutionary activities in Bengal. A special focus on revolutionary activities in Bengal. Look, there are many streams of Indian national movement, many streams. Notably, if you separate Gandhi, then you can write here in the introduction box that there were many streams of Indian national movement, which is characterized as moderate, extremist, and revolutionaries. The philosophy of revolutionaries was basically the active resistance by the use of force, by the use of violence. Active resistance by the use of force or by the use of violence. This is act of revolutionaries. So revolutionary movement had started in the atmosphere of political frustration. Political frustration. When moderate politics or the extremist politics failed to fulfill the aspiration of the people. Moderate or extremist politics failed to fulfill the aspiration of the people, then the revolutionary movement had started. Okay. Then during the 1920s, that is after suspension of non-cooperation movement, the nature of revolutionary movement was very different. After suspension of non-cooperation movement, we'll find that the nature of revolutionary movements are very different. 1920s, you'll see revolutionaries were more organized. It had centralized command. It had developed the social support. You know, social support, because violence in Indian society is never accepted. Therefore, the people of India never supported overwhelmingly the revolutionary activities, so there was no social support, right? So more organized, centralized command, and they had developed the social support. Revolutionaries were inspired by Lala Hardayal. Lala Hardayal, he was a seasoned campaigner of Ghadar party, and once he was expelled from Punjab, he had settled. He expelled from America, he was settled in Punjab. So he was guiding the revolutionaries, Lala Hardayal. Then second important fact is that the revolutionaries had proper objectives. Proper objectives. They wanted to establish a republican government. Once British will be expelled from India, there will be Republican government. Objective of this government was socialism. Socialism. And they believe in secular India. So these fundamentals was very clear to the revolutionaries. These fundamentals were very clear to the revolutionaries that they had a proper objective. In this phase you'll find many books was written by the various revolutionary ideologue which was inspirational source to the revolutionaries, like Bandi Jeevan by Sachin Sanyal. Bandi Jeevan by Sachin Sanyal. Like Pathir Dabi by Sharad Chandra. Sharad Chandra. And then another book, The Philosophy of Bomb by Bhagavati Charan Bohra. So Bhagavati Charan Bohra and Sachin Sanyal, Sharad Chandra, they all had contributed a lot in guiding the revolutionary network. Look at the question again. Question is saying 20s and 30s with a special focus on the revolutionary activities in Bengal. Obviously, you have to mention something here. And then revolutionary movement in Bengal. So here in 1920s, Hindustan Republican Association by Ram Prasad Bismil, Sachin Sanyal. And then you will talk about the Kakori train action. The name I had changed to Kakori train action, in which 4 revolutionaries were hanged. Then again 1928, now this is action of Bhagat Singh, HSRA, Hindustan Socialist Republican Association. And then you'll find that Bhagat Singh, he threw a bomb in the Central Assembly. He killed Saunders in Lahore. So Central Assembly bomb case. Central Assembly bomb case and Lahore conspiracy case. Central Assembly bomb case and Lahore conspiracy case. In both the trial, joint trial, Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev were hanged. In this 23rd March, these 3 were hanged. Then we have name like Badal, Binoy and Dinesh. Since it is a special reference to Bengal, so we have to point here, Badal, Binoy or Dinesh, they were trying to unfurl the tricolor flag on Writers Building, Calcutta. Writers Building is West Bengal Secretariat. So Writers Building at Calcutta. Writers Building at Calcutta. and they were killed by the Britishers. Badal Binoy Dinesh. They were trying to unfurl the tricolor flag on the writers' building. Then Jatin Das, he died after long fast in Lahore jail because of the condition of political prisoners. Jatin Mukherjee, they were very active in the 1920s and in 1930s. We have to write the special reference. Suri Sen, Suri Sen, and his Indian Republican Association. Most successful revolutionary activities conducted by Suri Sen, that is Chittagaon Armory Raid. Chittagaon Armory Raid. Most successful revolutionary activities. Chittagaon Armory Raid. What was so special about this phase? The participation of large number of women in the revolutionary activities. First time we can see the active participation of women in the revolutionary activities. We have the name like Beena Das, Priti Lata, Santi Ghosh, Suniti Chaudhary, and Kalpana Datta. Kalpana Datta, she was involved in Chittagaon Armory Raid. Involved in Chittagaon Armory Raid, and which is considered as the most successful revolutionary activities. So finally Suri Sen was arrested and he was hanged. So once Suri Sen was arrested and hanged, revolutionary movement came to an end. Although the revolutionary movement did not create an immediate outcome, but you'll find that very soon the revolutionaries had successfully created the mass euphoria. Mass euphoria, and gradually created successfully the mass euphoria. Gradually the revolutionaries had entered in the next phase. So second phase was more intense, more involved compared to the first phase, and every time when there was a mass upheaval appeal, that had added in the dimension of nationalism, which greatly helped in shaping the revolutionary activities. Which greatly helped in shaping the revolutionary activities. So this is the question that I told you that you can take the command of this question very easily, but you have to discuss comprehensively about all this. Discuss the course of revolutionary activities with special reference to Bengal in 1920s and 30s. Growth of Indian nationalism was due to both external factors as well as internal factors. This question also, India is a country which is called nation in making, or still we are under the process called nation building process. And India had a long history of being geopolitically united. So geopolitical unity of India is not a new thing. We have geopolitical unification during the Great Mauryan Empire. We have geopolitical unification during the time of Mughals. So this is not for the first time that British had created the geopolitical unity of India. Right? So it's not only Mughal or the British, but it had already had taken way back in ancient India also. So geopolitical unity of India. Mughal, before that we have the Mauryans. Okay. So feeling of nationalism was very deeply rooted and that is inherited from the long past. But when British started gaining the political power and the Mughal Empire disintegrated, there were a rise of many autonomous state. And when the British Crown had taken the control over India in 1858, British Crown had taken control over India in 1858. So as per the Crown, as per the British Crown, there was nothing so significant which could be said as a geopolitical unity because there were 565 princely states. They were totally different, and there were 11 provinces after 1935 Act. So 11 provinces and 565 princely states. How India got united, this is a long history which is based on the phenomena of nationalism. So there are many factors that had resulted in a rise of nationalism. There are many factors. So in 1857, if you look at India, the common Indians were more comfortable in identifying themselves as Gujarati, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil rather than calling Indians. But very soon, the regional identity was overshadowed by national identity. What I said, that if you look at the political configuration of India during 1857, regional identity was more dominant on national identity. More dominant on national identity. But after 1857, things had got reversed. Things had got reversed. After 1857, you'll find that the things had got reversed. And the national identity gradually had overshadowed the regional identity. The first thing is political administrative unification. Political administrative unification of India. Political administrative unification of India. British had implemented uniform general administration, uniform revenue administration, and uniform judicial administration. So this uniformity was simply to strengthen the British rule in India, and it was highly exploited. So therefore, the common interest had developed. Then introduction of English It had broken the linguistic barriers. It had made the inter-regional communication become very possible. Tamil, even the Bengalis and Punjabis and Tamilians, they can interact among each other, and it helped in developing the common understanding, which is called English. Then third is printing of books and publication of newspapers. Printing of books and publication of newspapers. There were many books published, which contained the political philosophy of West, which contained the political philosophy of West. Equality, liberty, fraternity, rule of law, constitutionalism, legislativism, all had started taking. So when Indians also got to know about all these things, they got the inspiration to demand all these things before the British. And newspaper had created the general awareness among the Indians. Okay. Then fourth is socio-religious reform movement. We have seen that there were many types of nationalism had evolved. Political nationalism, economic nationalism, economic nationalism, cultural nationalism, all had developed due to the awareness had generated among the Indians. Awareness had generated among the Indians. Socio-religious reform movement. Then fifth factor is establishment of Indian National Congress. Congress changed the paradigm of the politics. Nationalism had transformed into Indian national movement. Nationalism had transformed into Indian national movement. Nationalism had transformed into Indian national movement due to Indian National Congress. Then sixth factor is impact of the French revolutionary ideas. Impact of the French revolutionary ideas. And unification of Italy and Germany. 1870s. Unification of Italy and Germany. 1870s. And the seventh factor is reactionary policies of viceroys. Some of the viceroys, particularly take the note of Lord Lytton. There is Arms Act. Vernacular Press Act, celebration of Delhi Darbar during the famine, all these things had generated huge wave against the Indians, against the Britishers, which is called nationalism. Huge wave had generated against the Britishers. Okay. Then we have Lord Ripon. Particularly, I would like to discuss about the Ilbert Bill. Ilbert Bill. Ilbert Bill was a very important phenomenon. In 1883, Ilbert Bill was passed. In this bill, there was a scope of judicial uniformity. A scope of judicial uniformity. That Indian judges can see the criminal case of Europeans. Indian judges can see the criminal case of Europeans. Right? So, Lord Ripon, during his time, there is a Ilbert Bill controversy. Judicial uniformity was maintained through this bill. Indian judges can see the criminal case of Europeans. Okay. Then next is, Lord Dufferin. Lord Dufferin. Dufferin had a hostile approach towards Congress. Hostile approach. Lord Dufferin, he called congressman as a microscopic minority. Many Britishers defined Congress as organization of disloyal babus, seditious Brahmins, and violent villains. So Lord Dufferin, he described Congress as a microscopic minority which was vehemently opposed by nationalists like Dadabhai Naoroji. Dadabhai Naoroji said that we can tolerate Leeton, but we should not tolerate the Dufferin. And then policy of Lord Curzon, it had really created the wave, and perhaps it had transformed nationalism into Indian national movement. Curzon, he has ambition to partition of Bengal to provoke communalism in India, to create the minority consciousness, to appease the Muslims, partition of Bengal. And Curzon had subsidence of the Congress also in the plan. Curzon wanted to subside Congress. Lord Curzon said that Congress was tottering to its fall, and one of the biggest ambition of my life is to give it peaceful demise. One of the biggest ambition of my life is to give it peaceful demise. This is a statement of Lord Curzon. Right? This is a statement of Lord Curzon. And subsequently Lord Minto. Lord Minto. Establishment of Muslim League, grant of separate electorates. So because of the British policy of divide and rule, you can write that how nationalism had evolved very significantly. How nationalists had evolved very significant. So Lord Minto second. Lord Minto second. So these are the factors which actually the demand of question is discuss the rise of growth of Indian nationalism was due to both external factor as well as internal factors. Now come to the question number 10. Bengal united is a power, but Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. Bengal united is a power, but Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. In the light of this statement, discuss that Lord Curzon did historical mistake which ultimately resulted in aggressive nationalism. Question is very straight. Bengal united is a power. Bengal united is a power. Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. Bengal united is a power. Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. This is the statement of British Home Secretary Risley. A statement of British Home Secretary Risley to Lord Minto. Risley, he was a Home Secretary. Risley said that Bengal united is a power and Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. Look, Bengal was nerve center of nationalism. You start from here. Bengal was nerve center of nationalism. All the ideologies of the national movement, whether it is revolutionary, whether it is extremist, whether it is moderate, all comes out of the Bengal and is spreaded in different parts of India. Right? So therefore Bengal was a very, very sensitive place where British was trying to create. British wanted to divide Bengal in two parts. There will be demographic inequality. British said that since the days of Prophet Muhammad, Muslims are fighting for their own homeland, and it is the biggest responsibility of the British to provide them. This is the statement of British. So how much Muslim abasement and then creating and solidifying the Muslim consciousness, and that impact of the partition of Bengal would be realized in entire India. So therefore British wanted to create many local problems, in Bengal. British wanted to create many local problems in Bengal. Like that will create the social crisis, economic crisis, all these things. Social crisis, economic crisis means there will be so many problems in Bengal. So many problems in Bengal. And thereafter, the local problem will divert the attention and the feeling of nationalism will get subsided. This is the real design. So partition of Bengal was basically, British designed the partition of Bengal in order to subside the rising nationalism in Bengal. In order to subside the rising nationalism in Bengal. Subside the rising nationalism in Bengal. Officially, Curzon said, that because of administrative convenience, we need to divide Bengal. Because of administrative convenience, we need to divide Bengal. Mainly because of administrative convenience. Now, look at the question. Bengal united is a power, but Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. In the light of this statement, discuss that Lord Curzon did a historical mistake, which ultimately resulted in aggressive nationalism. Okay. So actually the partition plan was announced in 1903 itself, that we need to. This is a brainchild of Lord Curzon. But very soon, when Curzon resigned, and then Lord Minto came to India as a viceroy. So Lord Minto on 16th October 1905 implemented the partition plan. And partition plan, it had a boomerang effect everywhere. The partition plan, there was a boomerang effect everywhere. So partition of Bengal was not only opposed by the Bengalis, but at the same time, the entire India, Telugu, Tamil, all had started, Marathi, Punjabi, all had started opposing the partition of Bengal. And nationalism, rather than getting subsided, had suit some. So partition of Bengal resulted in suiting of the nationalism. Nationalism had suit some. The partition of Bengal, you'll find that nationalism had suit some. At the same time, it had further instigated the Swadeshi movement. Swadeshi movement. There was a huge decline in the import of British garment in India. So Swadeshi movement, which is called all-comprehensive movement, in future it shaped the entire political journey of India. The idea that was taken during the Swadeshi movement, idea of self-reliant, this is called a yoga of Bahishkar. Bahishkar. So idea of self-reliant, yoga of Bahishkar, all were taken by the Swadeshi movement. So in future, we will find that how this movement became the core of the Indian national movement under Gandhi. So therefore, nationalism, rather than getting subsided, had suit some. So it had altogether a boomerang effect. And finally, 1911, during the Delhi Darbar, in 1911, George V, he visited India and he made announcement. Three major announcements was made. So no partition of Bengal. Bihar was separated from Bengal and capital of India was shifted from Calcutta to Delhi. So this all programming which is called. So no partition of Bengal. Bihar was separated from Bengal and capital of India shifted from Calcutta to Delhi. So with this announcement, Swadeshi movement and anti-partition movement came to an end. But anti-partition movement, it not only encouraged the moderate politics or further strengthened the Indian national movement, but extremist politics had got huge momentum during the partition of Bengal and the design of Lord Curzon, the aggressive policy. Then also you can see the massive upsurge in the revolutionary activities, violence, theory of bomb and guns. So all these things had all of a sudden had increased significantly. Curzon was master of the policy of divide and rule. Calcutta Corporation Act, Indian Universities Act, all these things was designed by Curzon, but ultimately it had a huge impact. I hope you can understand this sentence, that the sentence is very straight. Tools and mechanism used by British to exercise control over India. All these things were used by Britishers to exercise control over India. Similar tools and mechanism used by Indians to overthrow British rule from India. So whatever the British was trying to create as a mechanism of control, similar thing was used by Indians to overthrow British rule from India. Okay. So this is a third question in the series of today. First we talked about the revolutionaries, 1920s and 30s. Growth of Indian nationalism was due to both external and internal factors. Bengal united is a power, the partition of Bengal is always a very important episode. Now the next question is, look, question number 11 on your screen is, the political freedom is the life breath of nation. In the light of this statement, discuss that Aurobindo Ghosh gave genesis to extremism and the passive resistance. Aurobindo Ghosh, he is rightly called as father of extremist movement. Look at the statement, political freedom is the life breath of a nation. In the light of this statement, political freedom means if there is no political freedom, the nation is dead. So he said that political freedom is life breath of any nation. He said that Indians needed free constitution. Free constitution. Indians needed free constitution. without any superlative category, without any overshadow of imperial power. So free constitution means that Indian deserve with full political authority, full legislative authority. It should not be guided and dictated by the British government. Idea is called free constitution. Arvind Ghosh is rightly called as father of extremism in India. Rightly called as father of extremism in India. Arvind Ghosh, he wrote two books: New Lamps for Old, New Lamps for Old, and second is Savitri. In New Lamps for Old, he explained the idea of doctrine resistance, idea of passive resistance. Passive resistance is a type of mechanism which was also used by Gandhi aggressively. There is no positive harm, but doing such thing so that normal function do not function. There is no positive harm, but doing such thing so that normal function do not function. This is called idea of passive resistance. New Lamps for Old. In Savitri, he added religious touch to nationalism. He said that we are not fighting for the land, this is motherland. Matribhumi or Bharat Mata. So he added the emotional touch to nationalism. So Arvind Ghosh, he advocated free constitution in India. New Lands for Old, Savitri. So religious touch to nationalism. Motherland. So all these factors that led to the rise of nationalism. All these factors that led to the rise of nationalism. So Arvind Ghosh and his doctrine, that is free constitution. Now the next question is, throughout the British period, intensity of the colonialism keep on rising, but objective of the colonialism always remained the same till 1947. Analyze. Throughout. So throughout the British period, intensity of the colonialism keep on changing. That means we have, do you understand the meaning which is called colonialism and imperialism? Colonialism is a fact which you can say the after effect of imperialism. Both have the same objective and same effect. Same objective and same effect. Both have the same objective and same effect. colonialism and imperialism. Both have the same objective and same effect. In this light, we can say India had become victim of British imperialism in order to serve the colonial interest of Britain. India had become victim of British imperialism in order to serve the colonial interest of Britain. In order to serve the colonial interest of Britain. India became victim of British imperialism in order to serve the colonial interest of Britain. So ever since British transformed into political power, the beginning of colonialism had also started. India is considered as a classic British colony. So what is difference between colony and the classic British colony? Classic British colonies means not only ready to be exploited, ready to be exploited. So Britishers ever since transformed into colonial power, 1757 there was a first phase of the colonialism called mercantilism. 1813 to 1860, this is free trade. Free trade. And 1860 to 1947, we have the finance capitalism. Finance capitalism. (1757 to 1813, 1813 to 1860, 1860 to 19). So this is called finance capitalism. So here the intensity of the colonialism keep on changing. This because this is called indirect colonialism. And this is called direct. 1757 to 1813, 1830 to 1860, indirect and direct colonialism. So India became victim. Here you'll find that lots of developmental work was processed. But this phase was more exploitative compared to the previous two phases. This phase was more exploitative compared to the previous two phases. Previous two phases. (1757 to 1830). This is indirect colonialism because everything was looking through the East India Company. But here the finance capitalism. So intensity of the colonialism keep on changing, but objective of the colonialism always remains the same, and that is attainment of Swaraj. That is attainment of the exploitation of India. Yes. Likewise, we have the Swadeshi movement as a comprehensive movement which shaped all the future movements, including the Gandhi movement. I told you that out of the many movements initiated by the Indian National Congress, Swadeshi movement was having a very distinct position. Particularly, the shape of the Swadeshi movement started taking in 1903. Sanjeevani. K. Mitra. K. Mitra. Okay. Ek. Ashwini Kumar. So 1903, Sanjeevani. This was a magazine which promoted the Swadeshi ideas. And it was a first step in the Indian national movement when the concept of self-reliant and its practices was taken. The entire India, there was a boycott movement. And of course, the partition of Bengal had further intensified this. The partition of Bengal had further intensified the Swadeshi movement. But the concept of constructive boycott, which was taken by Gandhi in the national movement, it was beautifully managed during the Swadeshi movement as well. Constructive boycott. You'll find that the many Swadeshi industries had established during this period. Many Swadeshi industries had established during this period. Swadeshi Shipping Company, Swadeshi Cloth, boycott of English or the vernacular language, it had all together taken by the Indians. Sumit Sarkar had called it as a Yoga of Bhaskar, self-reliant Swadeshi movement. So you can tackle this question in the same way. Look, discuss the origin, spread and participation of the civil disobedience movement during the freedom struggle of India. Okay. So CDM, civil disobedience movement, it's a very straight formula. You can find that what is the causes. The second mass movement, that is civil disobedience movement, was most comprehensive movement with all kinds of technicalities involved in it. All kinds of technicalities involved in it. So causes is Calcutta session. In this session, Nehru report was presented. Congress accepted the Nehru report and gave ultimatum to the British to accept the report within a year. Otherwise, Congress will go for the mass movement. So, Calcutta session. 1929-30, World Economic Depression. World Economic Depression, 1929-30, the World Economic Depression. It had also huge impact. Third, Gandhi's 11-point program, 11-point program of Gandhi, which was rejected by Viceroy Lord Irwin. Gandhi gave all the chances to British to rectify it. And then fourth factor is imposition of salt tax, which prompted the launch of Dandi's March. March 12th, 1930, the 6th March 1930, the Gandhi had started from Sabarmati to Dandi, and he had taken the vows that till he will attain the Swaraj, he will not return back to Sabarmati. And this time, unlike non-cooperation movement, the term Swaraj was completely defined. Swaraj means, term Swaraj was completely defined, and Swaraj was independence. So in civil disobedience movement, the peasant movement was as usual. The peasant issue was as usual was given as a top priority. Top priority. Peasant issue was as usual a top priority, without any restrictions of its uses. And then we have the salt satyagraha in the coastal region, forest satyagraha, as usual in non-cooperation movement as well. Nai Dhobi Bandh, Nai Dhobi Bandh, and at the same time we have the non-payment of Chowkidari tax in Bihar and Bengal. So there was regional variations in this movement. There was regional variations in this movement. And non-payment of land revenue. Non-payment of land revenue. So there was spread all India as well as some area specific program started by Gandhi to attract a large number of peoples within this movement. Large number of movements. There was participation of almost all community. The first time you can see the participation of landlords, that is zamindar, capitalist, landlords, zamindar, capitalist, all. Peasant labor. Peasant labor. Participation of Muslim population was very less because of the fallout of the Khilafat movement after non-cooperation movement. So participation of the Muslim population was very less. But their non-participation was compensated by other groups, and therefore intensity of the movement was comparatively very high. intensity of the movement was comparatively very high. And that is the reason why it's not simply the non-cooperation, it was violation of law of all points which was initiated by British. And therefore the impact was clearly visible when we can see during the roundtable conferences how Gandhi was able to dictate the affairs. Let's look at the question again. Question was, discuss the origin, spirit, participation in civil disobedience movement during the freedom struggle of India. Right? But in the second phase of civil disobedience movement, second phase means after the Pune Pact, after the second roundtable conference. In this phase, intensity was already become very low, very less, because the mass movement should be necessarily short-lived. Otherwise, its intensity would become very high. So that is after civil disobedience movement in 1933. Gandhi came out from jail after the Pune Pact, and then he suspended civil disobedience movement. And 1934, after the massive earthquake in Bihar, he ended the civil disobedience movement. So these all descriptions should be there in this particular question. All discussions should be there in the particular question. Then look at the 15th number question. The third decade of the 20th century is a watershed in modern history in many ways. Third decade, you understand? 1920s is the third decade. In the 20th century, every decade had some valuable contribution with more intense movement against the Britishers. And particularly after the advent of Gandhi and his first experiment of the non-cooperation movement, it had a very big challenge. It had a very big challenge. So 1920s non-cooperation movement. So here the more intense program is beginning of mass movement. The mass movement had started immediately. There was a first time the huge participation of the masses. Huge participation of the masses. 1920s. But suspension of non-cooperation movement was same as that the withdrawal of the Khilafat movement as well. Khilafat movement as well. Its suspension of non-cooperation movement was withdrawal of Khilafat movement as well. So therefore, there was intense rise in communalism. Intense rise in communalism. There was intense rise in communalism. Then the beginning of Swaraj Party, which had adopted the method of again the constitutional politics. And then constructive program of Gandhi, which gave idea of self-reliance. Entry of left movement and many communist conspiracy. Many communist conspiracy. Left movement and many communist conspiracy cases like Peshawar conspiracy case, like Kanpur Bolshevik conspiracy case, like we have the Meerut conspiracy case. So left movement also became very attractive. And at the same time, we have the intense phase of revolutionary nationalism. This is a phase of Bhagat Singh, revolutionary nationalism. So these are the streams of the 1920s which make this a phase more intense and watershed in the history of the third decade of the 20th century. Is a watershed in modern Indian history in many ways, and it was highly significant as well. Look at the question number 16. Culmination of the differences between the moderate and extremists reached to its climax in Surat session, but the seeds of the split were rooted in the tussle between doctrine of constitutionalism and passive resistance. Yes, the both moderate and extremist had fundamental difference on the level of mass base, on the level of method and technique, on the level of objectivity. Mass base, method and technique, and objectivity. Mass base. The elite class mass base of the moderate, English educated. Most of the moderates, they admired the British institutions and British politics in India. They admire. They were not against the British rule, but they were against the un-British character of British rule. That is what I said, mass base. Okay. And here extremist. Extremist, they believe in, they're from the middle class, they were mostly the cultural nationalist. Okay. Then method and technique, we have the constitutional politics. And here we have the passive resistance. And objective is self-government and so much. So this is how the moderate and extremist politics had differ. But the partition of Bengal, we have to talk before the Surat session. After discussing the differences between moderate and extremist, we have to talk the Benares session. (1905). We have to talk the Calcutta session. 1906. So Benares session 1905, Calcutta session 1906. Benares session. Here extremists demanded that there should be all India movement. All India movement. However, the Calcutta session, the first time a resolution was passed and on Swaraj, which was a clear victory of the extremist politics. Which was a clear victory of the extremist politics. There were 4 big resolutions were passed. We have the Swaraj, Swadeshi, national education, and boycott. These 4 resolutions was passed in the Calcutta session, first time resolution on Swaraj, and therefore you can tell here that yes, the extremist politics had almost dominated in the phase of this 1907 Calcutta session, 1906 Calcutta session. Since rise of extremism in the Indian National Congress was looking very dangerous for the interest of British rule, and that is the reason why That is the reason why you will find that British government proposed a very big constitutional reforms. And that is the reason why in Surat session of Indian National Congress in 1907, moderates wanted to take back all the resolutions of the Calcutta. Moderates wanted to take the advantage of the situation. So all the resolutions of the Calcutta session should be taken back. And that ultimately created the massive rift between the moderate and extremist, and which had turned into a very ugly moment when there is a throwing away of the chairs, shoes and all had happened in the Surat session. And then the president of the session, Ras Bihari Bose, expelled the Lal Balpal, the extremist tray. Expelled Lal Balpal, the extremist tray, and which is known as Surat Split. And this was completely a victory of the British government. This was completely a victory of British government. So altogether, by the time of Lord Minto, the seeds which were sown by Lord Curzon of the policy of divide and rule, it had transformed into reality by the time of Lord Minto. So Congress became the dormant thereafter. Lal Balpal, all last Bal Gangadhar Tilak, was sent to Burma, 6 years imprisonment. But these differences remained only an ideological difference. It was not a real difference. It was only ideological difference. Because after some modification in 1907, in the 1916, some modification in 1916 in the Lucknow session, both moderate and extremist reunited. So sessions should not be called as a real session, which actually causes the rift, but it was ideological difference between moderate and extremist. So these are the questions you can see, and there was answer framing of all these. So we have talked about Aurobindo Ghosh and then colonialism. There are variety of the things you can watch here. Swadeshi movement, civil disobedience movement, the streams of the nationalism in 20th century, third decade, moderate and extremist. So we try to cover almost all the part of the discussion. Of the national movement. Okay, so next we will talk some other questions as well, but try to use the short sentence and try to write suggestive conclusion as well. Okay, that is the one thing you have to keep in mind. Thank you so much for the day. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Have a good